Right, it just told me we're recording.
Thank you. Is it a is it Verona? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
Verona. Verona.
Verona. Nice to finally meet you, and thank you for taking the time out of your Easter weekend, and really appreciate that to meet with me.
Well, it's no problem. It's going to be a quiet weekend, and this is probably the most important thing that will happen the whole weekend.
Mhm.
But I'm only too happy to talk to people about the Virtues Project and what's going on in Fiji, and I'll answer any of your questions. Perhaps a little bit of background about my situation and how I came into the Virtues Project, and what my experience has been. And then you can ask questions around that on what you're looking for. Okay. Um, I ran a non-government organization from 1976 to 2002. And one of our main projects in the last 10 years was to uh, work with schools, boarding schools, to get the children fed properly because the parents were responsible for feeding their children. And what we were doing was explaining to them the importance of having the right kind of foods. And if necessary, we got them to set up farms around the school or to improve their own agriculture so they bring food to the school for the children. So that was the basic situation. And then in 92, I was in Adelaide for another meeting, and my sister-in-law gave me a book, The Family Virtues Guide. And when I looked at it, I said, my goodness, this is just what we need for talking to our parents about, the importance of children and raising them. So I brought that back to Fiji. And not long after that, Dan and Linda Popov had done a tour of Australia. In fact, that's how my sister-in-law had the book. She'd been with them for some of their presentations. And so they were coming through Fiji on R&R after having gone through Australia and New Zealand. And one of the other women here had known, who was from Canada herself and had known their early work. And she asked them to come and if they would visit her village. And so I contacted them at the hotel where they were staying, and I had a long interview with Dan because Linda had gone off to the village. And then that evening there was a presentation from them on the Virtues Project. So at that point, we took it on full board with the schools project. It was part of the schools project, and presentations to the parents on the importance of using virtues training for their children it was like an informational presentation. It wasn't an actual training or anything like that. And then the Popovs came through a couple of times and did training for us, and we had people come in and learn how to be facilitators and so on. So we had a very early, very strong start with the Virtues Project. And then I retired from that position in 2002. And by then we'd been doing, I think we did virtues in the communities or something. We'd got a project funded to do some work with the virtues. So we decided that we'd set up a virtues project, non-government organization, standalone thing. And then we had funding from the Australian government to work with schools. We got funding, I think the funding went to New Zealand government. What we did, we advertised virtues in little cartoons in the newspapers for a while. And the director of prisons saw this. And he called me and said, how would this be appropriate? Because he had some funds from New Zealand government to spend on something. So we ended up giving virtues training in the prisons, which went off very well until there was a change of staff and they weren't so interested. And we find actually very reasonably reports that even though we're not directly engaged with the Virtues Project in prisons, they're still working with it. They're still using it. And ex-prisoners are talking about how it changed their life, and they're still working on it. So that was another sort of chip, another element in the thing. But then we had a grant to work with communities in this district where I am in Bar Province, and we introduced it to about 40-something villages. But the thing that came out of that, which always stunned us, was one area that was it was like if you lived there, you were looked down on. You lived in a rubbish heap. Nobody was interested, and the people there were depressed. And the children came out of school at 15, and just lay around the houses and didn't do anything. It was a really down community. And this woman was related. I think her husband was from there or something, and she took it on herself. She would go regularly to visit the village. First of all, she presented the Virtues Project, and she went regularly to help them implement various things, like they tidied up the village and put a fence around it to keep the animals out. But they established instead of having just the old men running the village, they established a committee with the women and the youth on the committee. And they made their plans, and they said, one of the things we want is for some of our children to graduate out of tertiary institutions. So they made this goal, and they did all these wonderful things. And this was in 2009. And in 2019, I said to staff, I said, whatever happened in that village? They're still working, you know, in that community, because there were several villages, they're still doing anything, or have they just reformed back to where they were? So our staff went up and looked at it. They were staggered. They were still using the Virtues pick. There was hardly anyone in the village because they were all out. Some were at the market selling their produce, others were out in the fields working on it. They had had several children come through tertiary institutions. It was just the most mind-boggling result. And they did it themselves, which will, of course, is what you want out of this. You don't want to be feeding people forever, but was that 6 months of dedicated service by that facilitator that turned that community around. And I've been saying ever since, we want people to understand that they should go and visit that village and talk to the people and find out how it was that it changed things. So these are the things that have happened, but we never got funding after 2000 and not that particular episode. And Virtues Project International Association had got started. It was actually Dan and Linda had been running the Virtues as a sort of business for themselves, and they knew that they couldn't go on with it. So they created this and handed everything over. All the copyright and everything went to VPIA. And they were struggling because they didn't have quite the right people in the positions they needed, and this was happening. And then one of the things they needed was funding. And I said, well, I have a colleague here who's using global giving for his work. So we created a project for Vale Hilliker to come here with the Virtues puppets and applied to global giving for funding for this thing. And that's where it took off. I mean, they've just done so well. Global giving has kept us going since wherever it was. So we put ourselves into that. And you know, it's just grown and grown, and they've got 3 projects going in Africa that are supported, and now Fiji one still gets grant funding. So that's basically how things got to where we are. We don't have enough money out of global giving to pay anyone, so we have a group of youth who are in their free time and what have you. They go around and talk their peers about the virtues and what it's done in their lives, particularly the ones who've been abused. And currently a group of them are working with street children in Suva who have run away from home or left home, beaten out of the house, and they don't have enough food. They're living in the streets. They're not comfortable. And this group got together and are working with them to try and help them. So this weekend, there's a big meetings going on all over the place, and these peer educators are attending this to present what the Virtues Project is doing. So it's all out of my control. I just sign the checks. So that's where we're at the moment. And I was talking to Val Hilliker last week, and she was saying that they want to up their activities, up the level of work they're doing, and put in a strong proposal to global giving or somewhere. I'm looking for a donor that would support things. And I explained to her,
I'm just gonna
you're not
put my
money.
hear you better.
Right. So I explained to her she's not going to get funding to support the administrative structure, which is what they need. So what you look for are areas where people will fund, like, for example, equality of men and women. You want to promote women's interests or something, and lots of agencies will work with anything that's to do with women. There are plenty of agencies doing anything to do with children. So you develop your project around that, and you present it as a project to address women or children or whatever it is you choose. And your component of administering it goes to the Virtues Project International, so that you get your funding for that purpose through those materials areas. So anyway, that was where we left it off, and so we're going to have to do some more proposal writing in the near future.
And that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So, are you from Australia?
Yes, originally I came to Fiji in 1971. I've been here ever since. I'm a Fiji citizen, of course, now. So,
Um, I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, that's pretty much. I wanted to know, what you guys like, what more in depth of what, I guess kind of like a day-to-day operation. Um, like if you can explain that, but I know you said you just signed the checks, but I know you said that just have like you have some young volunteers that do it on their own time. Is that right? And they go and try to meet with these, is it mostly women and children? And sorry, go ahead.
well, they're calling themselves peer educators because they're really appealing to the youth. I mean, when I say youth, anybody under 30 is related to youth in Fiji. So these are in their 20s.
Yeah.
But they're particularly focused on family. The families are falling apart. I mean, there's no question about that. Parents don't know how to manage. They're all busy with their trying to earn an income. They're out in the village, they're out in the streets, they're out in the business, whatever they're doing, and they're not looking after their children. And one of the components of the project, which has made a very big difference, is that parents need to listen to their children. So they must set aside a time in the evenings or after school or whatever, just to sit down, coming back from work, or just sit down and listen to what the children have got to say. And just listening to the children has made a huge difference to a lot of the families, because now they're understanding a little bit more about what pressure these kids are under, how they're coping with what's going on, and giving them as what guidance they can. There's a community just outside of Latoko, the city where I live, where it was set up by a guy who was passionate about helping the poor. And he used the Rotary, he was a Rotarian, but he used them to build, first of all, he acquired 40 acres of land, or ex-cane land, and built these little rooms. I mean, basically one room, perhaps with a divider in it, so they had a bathroom, bedroom, and a sitting room, and kitchen and facilities on the outside. They had kitchen and bathroom on the just little outside the house. And they've got over 1,000 of these little houses now in this area, and the area is broken up into groups, so that if you're living in one of these houses, there's a cluster of houses around you who are associated with you, and there's a management program for that cluster of houses. And we introduced the Virtues Project to that organization or that structure. And we now have some people there who are living in the area and living in the house there, and working very closely with the children's programs, the junior youth programs, and doing stuff with the parents with virtues underlying everything. We're going to transform that entire community. They're going to transform that entire community, because they're going about it. And a lot of the problems, like single mothers and family kids and all this sort of thing, And by learning to listen to their children, and when they have problems they can't solve, they can consult their neighbours and say, this is happening. They're finding solutions. And this is the way it's got to go. But it's easy down there because they're all in one location. They don't have to cross the street and go down the road or what have you. So it's another area where things are working. And people who experience this can go out and share it with others. This is another aspect of the whole thing. How can people share what they're getting out of this? So these are elements of the whole project.
That's awesome. I also seen that. Do you guys like use like puppets or something like that? Puppeteers?
So what?
Did you guys have like you guys have trained people to use like kind of like puppets to kind of like a puppet show to
Oh, yeah, they did. We did have that for a while. When Verona Lucas came with her puppets, she came back a year later to train the people in the drama society at the University of the South Pacific. But I don't recall there was any major consequences from that.
uh,
The youth, these peer educators have puppets that they use them sometimes to illustrate stuff. But we haven't got the funding at the moment. Ford Motor Company gave us 5,000 Fiji dollars 2-3 years ago, which we used to revise the kids when came in and did a review of the virtues training. And then they went out and they did a lot more in the community because of that 5,000 US turned into 10,000 Fiji, so we could do quite a bit. But that project was about 6 months. And now we're down to about $5,000 a year from Global Giving, which is mainly used for helping them with transport and communications. They get their phones topped up so they can talk to one another and share what they're doing. Other than that, we can't do much for them.
that's awesome. So basically, you guys just are teaching the families in Fiji to sit down and listen to what the children have to say. So because they're kind of being they're feeling that they're not heard or they're being forgotten, and then when they're able to sit down and share with the parent, they're able to figure out what they both need and come up with solutions to their family, what their family is kind of what they're going through or what they need, what the child needs and what the parent can do to help. Is that basically what you're telling me? Sounds like.
Yes. We have another project which hasn't established itself yet, but I got onto using crystal beads. One of the first models I made was this one here. Each one of those represents one of the 5 strategies of the Virtues Project. And the brooch is pinned to a card. You can see that very well.
Oh, yeah.
The
The 5
card,
rings of crystal beads or teardrop beads scatter. Well, yeah, I can see it.
yeah,
Scatter light the same as the virtues scatter light from us. With we use the virtues. Each ring or teardrop represents 5 strategies of the virtues project, which are tools to express the virtues in our lives, speak the language of virtues, recognize teachable moments, set clear boundaries, honor the spirit, offer companioning,
Then we tell people how they can learn, where they can find out more about it. And the purpose of the Virtues Project was to raise children of character.
I love that. I don't know if I emailed you the reason why I chose Fiji is because I actually was a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ way back in 2003, 2005. And it kind of seems like, I guess from my perspective, it kind of seems like you guys are pretty much, it's doing similar things. When I was a missionary, you had to go around and, share the message of the gospel. But I guess I'm just contrasting with what you guys are doing. You guys are going, to families and sharing with them the five strategies, and I guess I kind of see like, man, it's like very similar to when I was a missionary. But yeah, that's
But the Virtues Project is not associated with any religion, which is very, very interesting, because then people see it as something personal, something that appeals to them as a person, not as coming from a religious organization. And this is one of its, how would you say it? It's one of the big pluses in terms of teaching people, because the virtues are the foundation of all religions. They're the foundation of all cultures. And the quotations used in the virtues definitions, have you seen the virtues cards? I'm sure you have. Have you seen the virtues cards?
oh, only the one that you showed me, but I don't, is it on the web? Is it online? I'll have to check it out
Yeah,
online.
you can get them online, or you can see them online, but I have a pack of 100 reflection cards here. So the first one at the top here has to be cooperation. So it, those qualities are universal. It doesn't apply to, and it reflects every culture. And on the back, there's a quote for each one. And this one says, though force can protect in emergency, only justice, fairness, consideration, and cooperation can finally lead men to the dawn of eternal peace. That's David Eisenhower, his 34th president of the United States. But then they have quotes from different religious groups and so on. So showing that this is a universal component of life. It's not something that belongs to anyone, it belongs to each one of us. And that takes the exclusion out of it. It's, join my church and I will teach you how to behave. It's not like that at all.
Yeah,
I'll teach you how to behave and you can join any church you like.
it's kind of like a you're building teaching people to have a foundation of built upon these virtues, which is a foundation that is for universally for everything, anything, and everything in life. I guess that's my interpretation, and that's what I interpreted when I was investigating your guys' website, and I'm a big I support stuff like this, especially with having gone through with mental health and trying to figure out how to navigate my own life. Even though I went back to school at an older age, I had to like pretty much rebuild my life, and that's what I kind of see with the Virtues Project as you're giving them these foundations. Like myself, I had to rebuild my life on these foundations, like you showed me cooperation or honesty or integrity. These things, if someone like if a kid can build their foundation on these lives, be able to, like what you guys are doing now is helping them to build their life through, even though, like, even with a situation that, even if you're in a bad situation, like you shared, some of them come from the poverty, from the slums. I was in Fiji. I remember the slums there, and it's like, your situation is, yes, you're in a bad situation, but if you have these trainings or these strategies, these words, or like you guys are teaching them, they can be able to, lift themselves up out of their situation eventually one day. But yeah, I was just adding to what you were saying and giving pretty much why I like you guys. I chose you guys project because I saw that in myself, saw that rebuilding my life at older age. I had to rebuild it on not like I had to rebuild it on principles that are virtues that are that they don't go away when you put them on as a foundation,
That's
whether
right.
it's a bad time or a good time, or in the long run. Yeah. Sorry, you
Did
go.
well, the pop-ups, Dan and Linda, who built this project, built it to as a parenting project, so parents would be able to raise their children. And the background was that Dan, Linda, and Linda's brother John was sitting around in 1988 or something like that, just chatting about things and saying how bad things were in the United States for the youth. They were killing each other and all this terrible stuff. What could you do to change that? And they came up with this. And Dan did all the research on the virtues, looked at all the different cultures, all the different religions, and drew down over 300 virtues. And they built 52, one for each week of the year. And they made the Family Virtues Guide, which was their first production. And within sort of like 20 days of producing this book, which they had to hand produce themselves, it was in 20 countries because people just picked up it. It just went whoosh. And it was a few years later that Penguin got the contract to publish it. And by then they'd produced another book for the schools because the next group that jumped into it were their teachers. They said, my goodness, this is what we need, So the Educator's Guide came into existence, and then Linda's produced a number of things since then, which were all virtues-based meditations and things like this, all stuff. But in the flame that started it was training parents, teaching parents to raise their children.
That's awesome. I just maybe have a couple more questions, and
Yeah,
I'll let
sure.
you go. I'll let you go here. Um, how do you guys like track your progress or like success, kind of, or to what is it to you guys? How do you?
Well, at the moment, Global Giving asked for 3 monthly reports, and I got one due in 10 days. So what happens is the girl who manages the peer educators is a Fijian, and she's dealing with Fijian youth. And so through their connections on their phones, they send her reports about what they've been doing, and she collects it and sends it on to me, and then I collate it into a report for Global Giving. In those reports are frequently how many people they reached, what was said, and this sort of thing. Now, the consequences of that I don't get. We do get stories. There was one fascinating story where 5 of these youth went to their home village on another island, an island called Kandavu. You know
Yeah.
Kandavu?
Yeah.
So they went to their home village in Kandavu just to spend some time with the families. While they were there, the police raided a plantation growing marijuana.
Oh, wow.
4 youth had come from Suva, 3 youth had come from Suva, and there was 1 from that village were involved and arrested. The village was so embarrassed and upset that their village had been associated with this criminal behavior. So these peer educators were able to take the opportunity and talk to the village about the virtues of all that was involved. And of course, the arrest and all this sort of thing was in the newspapers and all this sort of thing, but the consequences didn't come into the newspapers. But the point being that they were there, they used the opportunity to talk to their community. So what was the outcome? I don't know. You know, we do know, like I told you that about the community in behind Nandi, where when they revisited 10 years later, they're still doing virtues picks, they're still working together, they've got their businesses and so on. So we haven't seen that kind of result. So as I said, these kids report their activities, they give numbers about the number of people attended something and who heard it, and if there is any stories like that one in Kandavu, so that's a quarterly report goes to Global Giving.
That's awesome. Thank you. Another question I have is, what do you do to like decompress or like, away from, away from the everyday, your job? What do you do? Yeah.
What? Sorry, at the beginning of that question.
Being that, Fiji is a, very paradise place. Do you like, for like when you do on your off time or to get away from work, do you go enjoy anything around Fiji or stuff like that? Just what do you do?
You get out of the country if you can.
Oh,
No, Fiji is in a dire situation. Political upheavals, the maladministration, the corruption. It's just gross. It is gross. We have two businesses. We have a radio station, we have a communications business. And quite frankly, we don't know whether we can survive because of the behavior of the government. You like, well, an example that's so glaring in our face at the moment. We have purchased a couple of properties near the town where we have the business operating from, right? Those properties are under the Native Land Trust Board, are owned by the Native Land Trust Board. So those properties were residential properties just close to the city, and all of those properties went to commercial activities. And my husband applied to get the change from residential to commercial 10 years ago. They finally woke up a year or so back and said, oh my goodness, all these people on, residential properties are not paying us. And now they're asking extortionate amounts of money to convert to commercial lots. It is criminal. And that's the way we're being treated by so many government departments. And they don't talk to one another, and it's just huge. So when I'm in Australia or visiting my family or whatever, and I'll go shopping and something and say, we live on Fiji. Oh, what a wonderful place. You're lucky, blah, blah, blah. I said, yes, it's a wonderful place for a holiday. You come to the hotels, you're treated like wonderful, but don't invest a cent in the country because it's not worth it. The hassles to get any kind of agreements, any kind of contracts, any kind of anything is insane, just insane. So yeah, where do you go for a holiday? You get out of the country for a while, away from it all.
I agree with you on that. When I was there as a missionary, yeah, we saw, I seen that too. I seen the corruption and how it doesn't work how it works in like bigger, countries. But oh, I have one more question for you. That's okay. Um, uh, what is the best part about your job or about the virtue part or what you're doing now over there?
I think that when you see things like that community that changed, I mean, that's only one example. There are many, many examples of people who've gone through virtues and done wonderful things out of with their lives as a consequence of having discovered this. But that is a reward in itself. You know, you don't have to, you know, you struggle with the outside, with the administration and all that nonsense. But the reward, I mean, you're working in a very difficult environment in terms of people's behavior. What's happened at their government levels with the government behavior and stuff like that. They've just had the previous prime minister, and one of his coups has been had up for some stuff that he did.
Is that Bainimarama?
Yeah, Bainimarama is just, and he got his punishment. They finally decided he was guilty, and they sentenced him. They gave him a fine, and you can imagine the consequences of that. Of course, as I said to my husband this morning, all the people who voted for him must be pleased because he hasn't been punished and put in jail, which is what they were worried about.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, the people who thought he should have been punished are not happy because he hasn't been punished enough. But I've been concerned because if they'd put him in prison, this country could very well have erupted because there's a lot of people supporting him. But I thought someone's found a nice path through to moderation. So for me, that's all part of the rubbish that's happening on the planet, and everywhere is going on everywhere. So for us to see the changes happening through what's being done with the Virtues Project, and I'm involved with a program to rehabilitate the reefs, the coral reefs in the Pacific, just amazing stuff. It's very rewarding in itself. And, you know, you can sort of say, well, the rest of the world has got to go down the toilet. We've got all these positive things happening, which, you know, are going to build a substantially hopeful future. I don't know whether you've heard of the Baha'i faith, but, you know, we believe that we're going through a bad time to clean up the rubbish that we've had to deal with. And after a period of time, we're coming through it, it'll be cleaned up, and we're having a world which is going to be built more on virtues and stuff like this. So we're not concerned. We can see the old system being wrapped up and got rid of, but a new system which was based on free and fair elections without politics and electioneering and stuff like this, with an administration structure which is being presented as a model for the world to look at, as a way to get past all the political nonsense. All this is a process of the development of the human race. And we've been through a number of processes. You know, as Christ came and produced civilization built on love, and then Muhammad came and built a civilization built on nationality, nations, and so on. So we see all this as part of a long process. And right now, virtues and the work of the Virtues Project, the work of Corals for Conservation, the work for, you know, there's so much positive stuff going on that you have to just deal with the negative stuff and get on with your life.
Very true. Can I ask you another question?
For conscience.
What is your, do you have a favorite cuisine, Fijian cuisine over there?
Yeah, whatever's coming off my garden.
Oh.
That's another issue. Food security is now a huge issue all over the planet. Even I was born and raised in Western Australia, which is cut off from the rest of Australia by a big desert, right? Climate change, the desert's flowing with water, and they can't truck the food that has to come from the eastern states to feed the west. The shelves are there's no food on the supermarket shelves.
Is this in Fiji right now?
Yeah, right now.
Oh, wow.
Yes, my daughter-in-law was telling me about it. Because so much food has to be imported from the eastern states, where they, you know, have better climate for vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. And so for eons, we've eaten off the eastern states, and now there's nothing.
Are you talking about Australia or Fiji?
Well, here, so many people have left the country all the workers have gone. They've gone to Australia or New Zealand because Australia opened up and said, you know, come and help us because we need your workers. So they've fled the country. December, each month, about 1,000 Fijians leave this country for a one-way ticket out. So the production has gone so far down that buying cabbages and lettuce and tomatoes in the market, you're paying through the nose. And I have things coming off. We bought the block next door to our house in the suburbs. At that time, I was raising orchids and I thought, oh, I'll go into a bigger production. So we put up a flower house and grew orchids on that property. They got blown away by one of the cyclones and I've only got about 1,000 left instead of the 3,000 or 4,000 I used to have. So we dug up the ground. We've got cassava. We've got, last vegetable season, I got more tomatoes. There were no tomatoes in the market, but I got so many tomatoes that I filled up my freezer. And then people coming saying it's the only vacant block in the district. We want to buy it. I'm sorry, you cannot pay me enough for me to buy what I get off my block. Oh, yeah, right.
Well, thank you so very much, Verona, for meeting with me today. And I don't have any more questions. And
yeah, just send me an email. I'll be quite happy to answer anything that comes up that you're interested in.
sounds good. Well, you have a good rest, have Easter or holidays weekend, and Mother,
Yeah.
Mother.
Well, they might not.